Awesome.
All right, everybody. So I just want to let you guys all know, but I'm having a Q&A session right now with Chris. And as part of him being one of my students of the Rapid Tax Savings Formula, this is what you get. So Chris is asking this question about 1099s, and it's a very complex topic. But Chris, so you just a minute ago mentioned, um, actually repeat your question and then we'll address it.
Sure. So, of course, I'm last minute here putting together my 1099s
You're not
for
alone.
2020. Um, and I've furiously shot out some requests for W-9 forms to vendors that I work with or folks who I know I've paid more than $600 to last year.
Yes.
But the confusion for me is a lot of vendors are incorporated and have a business EIN tax number, in which case, am I required to send a 1099 to someone who has a business entity and an EIN tax ID number, as opposed to someone who is an individual who just has a, a social security number?
Love it. So let's break this down. So let's talk about what the law says. So the law says that as a business owner, I guess technically as an individual, but as a business owner, if you hire someone else for help, so not an employee, right? In fact, my last episode, Naked Tax Talk, I talked about you like basically I'm a dominatrix, and if I can dominate you, I've got control of you, which means that you're my employee, right? So
Right, right.
versus the other way around, we're mutual masters, right? So this is
Uh-huh.
the independent contractor. That's important. Okay, so the law basically says that whoever you hire to do work for you, that's not an employee, and you do compensate them more than $600 in a year, unless they're lawyers, then they get a 1099 from you, right? And it's your reporting company. What they give you before you can give them the 1099 is a W-9, and you said a whole bunch. Okay, good. So let's talk about this. Individual or business. So if I, as an individual, come in and a good example would be because your wife has a coaching business. So
Mhm.
let's say back in the day before COVID in BC and 2019 BC, we we would have had a live event. Let's just say, right? She would have done a live event at a hotel, and she doesn't need me. And I happen to I need a little extra something to do, right? And she only needs me for like that particular day, and I do have a couple of other people that I know that are speakers. And what I do is I drag all their equipment for them and I set it up for them and then I take it down. Right. And I don't really have a business yet. I mean, I do, but I don't. And I would call myself a sole proprietor. Right. So I have no legal entity. I still have a personal checking account. Right. I'm still commingling crap. But
Mhm.
I offer this as a service because I find out, right? So your wife's like, yo, JB, come out and can you haul my equipment, set it up for me? Boom, boom, boom. So we do that.
Right.
She pays me either in cash or a check.
Mhm.
And so she pays me with a check. And it's $670. But before she hands me the check, good business practice is she says, I need to fill out the W-9 first. Right. So there's no debate here. Fill out W-9, then I pay you.
Right.
So I fill it out and I don't have a business. I don't have an EIN. I'm again sole proprietor. Blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to use my social security number. That's the ID number. Write it
Mhm.
out, give it to her.
Mhm.
She's going to turn around, she's going to issue me a 1099 and she's going to report that to the various agencies, the IRS and the state, right? And she's using
Mhm.
my social security number. So what does this look like on the taxpayer side of it? Well, how many of us have gotten a letter called a CP 2000 notice in the mail and basically says, taxpayer, you forgot to include this income in your tax return and now you owe us money. That's the end result here, right? Unless you've disclosed it on your own tax return. Okay.
Mhm.
So that's someone who pays you more than $600 cash or check. They get a 1099. If they're an independent contractor now, they get a form called the 1099 NEC. That's the form that actually goes on now for 2020. All right.
Mhm.
You got to have it in their hands, postmarked technically January 31st, but because this year the 31st is the Sunday, it will be February 1st. That's because you, the business owner, wants to avoid a I think it's a $50 penalty for each time this is misses the deadline. Okay. Cool.
Mhm.
However, same scenario. I have a business called Event Setup LLC, and I do the same thing. She hires me, do the job, bring her equipment, do, and before she gives me a check, she gives me a W-9, right? So I, the recipient, go, oh, well, my event company has an EIN number, right? Because I applied for one when I became an LLC. By the way, for the record, you don't have to be an LLC to get an EIN number, right? So even if you're a sole proprietor, you can still get an EIN number because it's like your social security number before your business. Okay. So she's going to make out the 1099 to my business name and the entity EIN number. If I don't have any of those two things, she's going to ask me for my full name and my social security number. Make sense?
Mhm.
Now, here's where it gets a little tricky. If I'm a corporation, you don't issue 1099s to corporations. So, for example, take my coaching business, Tax Tiger Consulting Incorporated. So the name itself is incorporated. So therefore, I would not receive a 1099 from somebody I'm doing business with. Make sense?
Mhm.
Now, yes. So I have two things here: social security number or an EIN. So I, the business owner, am going to give you one of those numbers, social security or EIN. You, the recipient, to do your due diligence, you're going to go, oh, hey, you don't have an EIN number. Do you have a social security number? That's your due diligence.
Mhm.
Now, here's a fun fact. If we pay for said services or merchandise or whatever, and we use a credit card or a debit card, and it goes through a merchant processor like Square, PayPal, QuickBooks Online, the different merchant services, I do not need to issue a 1099 to that person because the um, merchant servicers like Square, et cetera, they're going to follow a particular rule, a particular part of the law that I'm going to go find right now because I just helped one of my friends out with this. And it falls under, for the law nerds out there, it falls under section code 6050W, subsection C, subsection 2 of the Internal Revenue Service, that basically says that merchant services are required to provide a 1099K to the people they process payments for. There it is right there. So what that means, Chris, this is rather interesting, is that when you're combing through your vendors, right?
Mhm.
And they pay you by a credit card, they're not going to issue a 1099 because the processor will pick it up.
Mhm.
So the reverse is true as well. When you look at the person you paid for services, one has to ask, how did I pay for it? Cash, check, or credit card. If you were using credit cards or debit cards, you don't have to issue them that 1099 because the processors will issue the 1099K.
Got it. Okay.
Does that clear it up a little?
So, so regardless of whether they have an EIN number, if their entity is an LLC or an S corp,
Mm-hmm.
they should, if you pay them cash or check, you, you should issue them a 1099.
It's not that you should, it's that you're required.
You must. You
Yes.
must issue a 1099 for cash or check payments
Yes.
to um, any entity, not
Except for
corporations,
corporations.
except corporations, right? Um, and then if you used a merchant servicer to pay them, so if I paid someone, they sent me an invoice in PayPal, I paid them through PayPal. No 1099 required because PayPal will send them a 1099K.
That's it. You got it.
Awesome.
You got it.
Um, That sounds good. That clears things up.
Yeah. So when you're just combing through your vendors, you just
Mhm.
make some notes.
Mhm.
Just be like, yep, that person we paid credit card, that person we paid cash, and then lawyers are the only difference. So now let's not confuse a lawyer who sells a program online that's a self-study program, right? That's not advice. You didn't hire them to give you direct counsel.
Mhm.
So in which case you would not issue them a 1099 regardless of the amount.
Mhm.
But I hire an attorney to help me with my landlords, my prior landlords, which is what's happening now, right?
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
issuing them a 1099, even if I pay them $1.
Got it. Because lawyers must have a 1099.
I really got to go do some research again because I remember it came out of a study that was done in like 2014 or 2013. It was in the early teens. And basically the IRS audits us, right? There's like 7 major techniques they use to audit people. This is why you and I and everybody out there really will never ever get out of an audit, so to speak, because it's just really randomized a lot of times.
Mhm.
So one reason why they audit is they want to do a study. So I think it was in 13 or 14, and the IRS wanted to know how honest, really that's what it was breaking down to, was how honest lawyers were about reporting all their income. And lawyers are different because they have a very different type of accounting. So as we know, or you may not know, but when you engage a lawyer and he says you pay me, or she says you pay me a retainer, right? Technically, it goes into a trust fund. So it goes into a trust, which is completely separate of who they are.
Mhm.
And then as they do the work, they bill against the trust that then pays the lawyer.
Mhm.
So the IRS was like, I'm just curious. I want to know how honest these peeps are. And so they started to do these audits. And of course, what they found out was that they did not do things. They just didn't know their own accounting. I mean, at the end of the day. And so they weren't reporting it correctly. And so the IRS said, we know how to make you accountable. We'll make the other taxpayer, your clients, hold you accountable by giving you a 1099.
Got it.
And what's fascinating is out of all of that came a revision on the tax returns. I don't know if you noticed this, you've prepared your own returns.
Mhm.
When you are a rental owner, like a Schedule E, so you have rental properties, or a business owner, you're like in your file, there's a question, right, that asks, did you conduct business that would require you to file a 1099? They're asking you, did you work with subcontractors? That's the question, or attorneys.
Mhm.
And then the follow-up question is I will or I have filed a 1099. So what you're doing is you're answering those 2 questions on a tax return that if you look at the fine print when you sign it, you're basically saying that under perjury, right? I'm signing this to the best of my knowledge that I know this to be true and correct. So if you knew that you conducted business with people but did not issue them a 1099 and then marked on the tax return otherwise, you could be on hot water. Hi, Michelle. So,
Jonathan just said hi. I've got you on my earphone, but
oh,
I didn't know he was talking to you. Sorry.
it's okay.
Asking all your good tax questions.
yes,
All of our 1099 questions.
he's here. Hold on.
Hiya, handsome.
Hi, sexy. How are you?
I'm good. Making money today makes me happy.
Oh, I love it. I love it when we make money. I'm not gonna lie. Like, don't you just feel great when you close a deal and you're like, yes.
Yes, I do. I do. And especially when we're getting our shit together. So I don't know
Yay.
where to put it. Awesome. Well, I won't interrupt you. I didn't know he was on the phone, so I started talking
Oh,
to
no
him.
worries.
Yeah,
Do you need me?
we're
Okay.
drilling down on the intricacies of 1099s and when and why you should file those. So.
We're just getting
so
all hot and bothered
satisfying.
over here. We're getting
Yeah,
hot and bothered
you
talking
two
about
have a good
1099.
time. Don't let me interrupt. We've been wondering about the 1099 kerfuffle for years. So
Yes,
it's
yes.
very satisfying. I hope you're both satisfied by the end of this call. Have a good time.
Oh yeah.
La, 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 la.
We might have a cigarette afterwards.
That's right. It's almost
Yeah.
cocktail hour.
Exactly. It's
You gotta get it where you can.
That's
Gotta get it where you
Got
can. All right. Love you both. Thank you.
Like, you love
yes.
you too. Oh my God, that's great. I'm red. Are you red? I think I'm pretty red.
I'm blushing. I'm blushing. My partner was involved. I won't tell yours though.
My work here is done.
That we had this intimate moment trading
Yes.
tax secrets.
With yes. Oh my God, this is gonna be great. Okay, so people have to watch this now to get to this moment in the video. Okay, no, but seriously though, back to what we were talking about. Yeah, so you're gonna satisfy that question. You know, did you in fact engage with people? Yes or no? And you're gonna answer that honestly. Which is why when we prepare tax returns, we do ask that question. Did you? And it's up to you to say yes or no. But that's really the conundrum of the 1099 for us as business owners. We can get really complicated. For example, you remember how we talked about rapid tax savings formula? There's 3 ways to get business money out of your business.
Yes,
Remember that?
is correct. You can pay yourself a wage, you can take a distribution, or you can take a loan.
Yes, wage, distribution, or a loan. And I think your mic may not be plugged in all the way or something. I
Oh,
didn't really
shoot.
get to hear
Hold on.
you.
Sorry, hold on.
It's all right though.
Let me see what
Okay, so we can get real complex. So like another one would be, so we talked about the 3 ways, right? Distributions, wages, or loan.
Mhm.
So when we talked about the loans, we talked about how you have a promissory note, and then we talked about how you have to pay interest on that loan, right?
Mhm.
So just like you issue a 1099 NES to a contractor, your company would issue a 1098, basically saying, I received interest income from you, and here's how you're going to report this. I just realized I changed the form number, 1099 and 1098. Another way to look at this is a 1099 is the receiver of the benefit, and a 1098 is the giver of the benefit.
Got it. Right. And what is the due date for the 1098 indicating the 1099s that you issued?
February 1st for this year in 2021. It's technically due by the 31st of January.
To issue 1099s, yes, but then there's also a form that you send to the IRS indicating how many.
Oh, the reconciliation. It's a 1096.
1096, thank you. When is that one
Yes.
due?
Ooh, you know what? That's a great question.
And get the summary back to the IRS, but I could be.
It's February 28th this year. February 28th.
Okay. So they
Yeah.
give you a
So yeah,
couple-
you got 2 really weird deadlines. You've got the recipient, as in it's in my hands, and then you have the actual 1096. That's the summary of all the 1099s, and that's going to go to the IRS. And then and actually the copy of the 1099 also goes to the IRS. It's really all what it boils down to is accounting. They're going, okay, you issued 1099s for $100,000, and your 1096 should reflect 10 of them, $100,000.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's your 1099s for you.
Awesome. Lots of good reporting stuff here so that we stay in compliance.
That's it, man. That's what we're here for. Keep you on your toes.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So that's all you're dealing with right now is the 1099s, getting those out.
Yeah, I am. I need to scramble and make sure I get a couple of W-9s out to people and get those back. Although, in some cases, I realized that I paid people through PayPal or with a credit card, in which case, don't have to do it. So that's nice.
Yeah. So it kind of really narrows it down. Like it really narrows it down. So like back in the olden days, again, before the 1099K came out, and I want to say that reform came about either in like 16, 17, 18. It's in that area, not very long ago. It started showing up, right? They started, again, because what they realized is that taxpayers were not disclosing all their money to the IRS, right? And so, of course, the IRS is like, we got to put a stop to this. So they put these stopgap measures. So, and really, the way I look at it sometimes is like the IRS turns us into little policemen. I mean, really, in many ways, right? And he's leaving the compliance part, the onus onto us to be compliant. And then us as, like, for example, me as an IRS enrolled agent, my
Mhm.
job is to make sure that that part of the compliance is being done. And actually people will get all upset sometimes, because it's like all this extra steps. But as you know, when we start working together more and more and more, especially like in 2021, this will be a really smooth sailing. Like this little hump won't exist for you ever again.
I have another question, and this may
Yeah.
be something you need to look up, but I feel like in past years when I was preparing my own taxes, and let me just give a quick plug here that I am delighted that JB Financial will be doing my 2020 taxes, and that I won't have to know all this stuff as much. But it seems like in years past, I went, let's say, onto my PayPal or other merchant accounts I had to look for Square, to look for a 1099K, and there was none. So that there was possibly um, a minimum amount of transactions or a total transaction amount that needed to be hit before they had to issue that form to me. Is that correct or no?
Repeat that one more time because somehow I got lost.
Got it. Okay. So let's say um, a bunch of people, let's say I paid people through PayPal in
Okay.
the past,
Okay.
and I went to look for the 1099K and it wasn't there.
Okay. So let's keep this in mind. The 1099K is going to be given to the recipient.
All right. So people paid me via PayPal.
Right.
More than, in some cases, individuals with more transactions that were more than $600, but I did not get a
From PayPal.
1099K from PayPal. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, the reason for that is because there are requirements for the 1099K that doesn't pertain to us, as far as we're concerned.
Mhm.
If I'm correct, and I'm kind of Googling it really fast, quite honestly, because what I remember from it is I believe there's a transaction amount, first of all, and there's a certain amount of transactions in a year that triggers the 1099K, right? But let's be real, it's none of my business how many transactions you do in your business as someone who's providing you a service, right?
Mhm.
So I have to assume that if I'm paying you with a credit card, it's a safe assumption, in my opinion. It's a safe
Mhm.
assumption if I'm paying you with a credit card or a debit card, that the merchant processors will issue you the 1099K.
Right.
So a classic. So I suppose when I think about that question on the tax return where it says, did you work with people that were to require you to file a 1099? You could say yes. And then the question is have you or will you file? You could say no,
Mhm.
right? Because your argument, should they come back to you and say, hey, you said no, even though you said yes, but you said no, it kind of contradicted yourself. I would suppose the argument then is, well, I wasn't required to, because the merchant services will take care of that because I'm paying with a credit card. That's
Mhm.
your out, in my opinion. I
Right.
don't know if there's any court cases that exist to prove that concept yet. That would be something you'd have to, right? It's kind of like what's fascinating about tax law. It's just like any other part of the law. You have to test it and figure out whether or not it's working the way it should. You know what I mean? And then they revise the law accordingly because of lawsuits or whatever. So like, I'm trying to think of um, like take it, for example, the court case. I don't know the exact name of the court case, but we get this thing called the Augusta Rules, which is a very complex tax strategy that we use with our clients. And we talked about this actually a little bit in Rapid Tax Savings.
Mhm.
And that comes out of a court case that basically says, yeah, if you have an S corp shareholder, no, if you have property and you're renting it for less than 14 days, there's some rules and provisions here that the law doesn't really impact. And so, of course, when it went to court, tax court, and they turn around and Augusta basically wins, It's set precedents, which is why we can come up with these tax plans and these strategies with guys like you and whatnot and go, yep, we're going to structure it like this. This is the rules you're going to follow, right? Original law doesn't apply. Interpretation of the law, precedents applies. Therefore, we can utilize this to our advantage.
Got it.
So I would imagine that, yes, I did do business. It requires 1099s, but no, I didn't issue them. Here's why.
Mhm.
Did you know, fun fact, that on a tax return, you can actually do something called a voluntary disclosure statement? So what you get to do now, I've personally not done any of these complex disclosures, but basically what you do when you're filling out the return, I don't advise it, by the way, unless you know what you're doing. But essentially what you do is you say to the government, when you file the return, we see these when you take a position on a tax return that you know has a chance that it will be audited. Like you have a really high probability they're going to come knock on your door. And so you're kind of preemptively striking. You're kind of going, so the reason why we took this particular deduction or the reason why we took this particular position is because of court cases, law interpretations, right? So you're basically telling them in advance, here's why we took what we took. And then, of course, what the government does when you file the return, it's either going to agree with your assessment or disagree with your assessment. And now you're going to be going back and forth. But did you know that you can actually disclose more on a tax return before you even file it?
Did not know that.
Fascinating, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
So I could see that happening maybe. I mean, I don't know why you would do that, but I could see that maybe that being a supporting statement.
Mhm.
FYI, we did do business with contractors. However, we paid every single one of them with credit cards. Therefore, we indicated no, that we're not filing 1099s.
Mhm.
I could see that.
Got it.
I'm trying to see yeah, if you don't know, you had to go look up the merchant, each one, like the merchant processors. I forget what the rule is.
Yeah, I feel issuing me some sort of a tax statement based on the fact that I've
Done
been
plenty.
paid. Yeah, and there was some qualification for you didn't hit the minimum transaction number or the total volume of transactions,
Um,
certain dollar amount
he-
didn't hit the, minimum.
Processing and dollar amounts. Well, here's what it says. IRS requires each payment settlement entity to send you a 1099K by the 31st. Okay, we already know that already. If it has processed at least $20,000 worth of payments and at least 200 transactions for you in the previous year. But you still could receive 1099Ks from some, even if this isn't required. So that's your threshold, $20,000 worth of transactions, at least 200 transactions. So let's be real. Most of us who are multi-six-figure businesses are going to easily surpass $20,000 in transactions. I mean, that's who we are. That's the nature of what we do, right? So again, I would say I do business. I say no, and I'd make a record of it, make a note of it. Here's why I didn't, because I paid everybody with credit cards. I'm not going to make the assumption that they had $20,000 worth of transactions.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not an either or, that's a both and, right? So if I received, $25,000 of purchases income through PayPal, but it was $5,000 items that I sold, then they're not required to issue a 1099K for me because it was only 5 transactions, not 200, right?
Yeah. And here's the thing, right? Like, we're not saying like, oh, because you didn't get a 1099 or 1099K, you don't have to disclose that, right? Like, we're just saying that, because let's be real, there's an honest truth here. And that is that filing your income is actually on an honor system. I mean, the entire tax system is based on honor. Like, truly it is. So you are, of course, are still going to disclose the income, right? You're still going to say how much money you guys made, regardless of receiving a 1099 from anybody, because that's part of your diligence as a business owner.
Yeah. And, to be honest with you, stuff like that is automatically tracked in my business ledger because it comes in as a PayPal feed in QuickBooks. So
Yep.
all of those transactions would be noted in my receivables and in my overall income at the end of the year, which is, what I'm going to declare on my tax form. So it's not that I am trying to get over on anything. It's just like, okay, here's one more reporting thing that I don't have to worry about because,
Which is interesting. So let's think about this for a moment too. So when the whole 1099K thing was coming out, so it's got to be 3 years old, 4 years old now. When this whole thing was coming out, what we were finding is that people were essentially having their income doubled. So we have to remember something about the IRS, right? And that is that they make the assumption that everything that's being reported to them is true and correct, right? So if on your financials, when you put together your profit and loss, and you show $100,000 in income, but you receive in combination of 1099s and Ks, right? Let's say it's $200,000. Oh shit. Because now Uncle Sam's going, it's not $100,000, it's $200,000 because that's what was reported to us. Right? So what we have to do in cases like that is we have to actually tie out through a process of reconciliation and disclose that on the tax return. Say, hey, listen, it's not $200,000. This person received a 1099K from this processor, which happens to be the same payer that this person sent him a 1099 for. So can you imagine the headache that creates?
Yeah, totally.
So, of course, I'm not saying we're not going to do our due diligence. Don't take it that way. But what we are saying is that if you are paying for services with a credit card or a debit card, I would think it's safe to assume that they're going to be issued a 1099K.
Right. Got it.
That's what I'm going to do. So with that, you just helped me make an episode of Naked Tax Talk.
Glad to be your guest. I wish you were wearing the identical sweater, so it could have been.
Oh my God! Well, let me put it on real fast so we can.
So it could have been Argyle Sweater Day on Naked Tax Talk.
Oh my God! Well, first of all, I do my show naked, and I'm wearing clothes. So I guess this will be like a special episode that I'm going to put. I'll release on Thursday.
This is almost Naked Tax Talk.
Almost tax. Yeah, the almost naked tax talk.
This is Naked Tax Talk with clothing.
With clothing, the first one ever. Actually, I think once I wore a bathrobe. Oh no, I wore one of my fancy jackets without a shirt because it was really cold. But yeah, look at this. Ta-da!
All right, good. Now we, this episode.
Oh man, like this would be great.
This episode is sponsored by
Argyle.
Land's End.
No, this is great. I'm so for my viewers out there, we talked about this last week on the episode. You're going to see this again. And if you are curious about your 1099s and need help filing them, it's coming up right now. There's not enough time, honestly. But what I will tell you is that next year we'll be open to helping you out. So with that, Chris, this is a great episode for everybody. I'm going to release this to everybody. I'm going to put this on my show, Naked Tax Talk. I think this will be an episode I'm just going to put up there. So
cool. Thanks for your time, Jonathan.
And on my show, I allow my peeps to promote themselves. So before we go, this is totally reverse order because it just came out of my ass to put this on my show. So really fast though, Chris, tell us a little about what is it that your wife does and what's her specialty and yeah, that kind of thing.
My wife is the amazing Michelle Copper, and she actually this month is enrolling students in her Fearless Facebook Live formula, which is digital training along with one-on-one coaching calls, so that if you are not utilizing Facebook Live as one of the, best free platforms out there to find your audience and generate excitement, interest, engagement in what you're selling or promoting or the message you're trying to share with the world to make it a better place, then you should be using Facebook Live. And if you have all sorts of fear, I hate the way I look and sound on camera, or
Oh,
it won't work for me, or I don't know what to say, then Michelle's got some really awesome trainings that will help you find that camera confidence,
yes.
and know what to say, so
Yes.
that your audience will be engaged and excited to hear that, and have a system to do that on a regular basis, so that you can grow your audience through creating frequent points of engagement like Naked Tax Talk,
Yeah.
so that your people know where to find you, and to get your unique message, coaching, teaching, healing tools.
I love that. You know, it's interesting. So I could have totally have utilized your wife's services many moons ago.
Mhm.
Because when I first started, I was with another coach, and we were making, similar type things, videos, that kind of stuff, etc. And I guess you could say, like, on one hand, I was a little bit shy. On the other hand, not really, because most people who know me know I'm very, like, out there.
Mhm.
But what I will say is that it took me forever to get over self-criticizing myself when I'd see myself in video.
Mhm.
Like, I would notice things on my own face primarily. That's me, right? I'd be like, oh, my teeth and this and that and hair patterns and right, all this other crap. And
Right.
what I realized is that all that was just self-ridicule. Like, that didn't help anybody. It just tore me down even more. And so eventually I just kind of got over it and started focusing, if you remember from my rapid tax class, really started to focus on the more of the positive aspects of my reflection. And that's part of this process, is looking in the camera, which is really right here on the screen. And then me looking at that and going, you are actually a pretty cute dude. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, some of that is our own ego, and or false pride in reverse, because if I judge myself more harshly than I would judge you, then that's not fair. So yes, we want to have a certain level of integrity and standards, but we have to be as forgiving with ourselves as we would be for other people, and also know that um, just like the teenager going out on a date who is sure that like everyone can see this big honking pimple on their
Yeah.
face, like we're so much more critical of ourselves than other people are. So
It's so
um,
true.
so that's a big one. But also, some people have um, uh, visibility blocks that are um, based on messages they got growing up, or trauma that they've experienced, or misconceptions that Michelle has a lot of ninja acting tools and techniques to help people heal that and get over it, based on her own story of feeling called to perform, and now to serve others. And then as soon as the cameras started rolling, freezing up. So
Yeah.
it's not uncommon, and there is a solution,
That's
and
right.
that is the fearless Facebook Live formula. So, oh goodness,
Oh, look at that.
sorry.
Perfect timing. That's the cue. Well,
Yes.
listen, we did this show in complete reverse order, which is fine by me. But listen, you're listening to Naked Tax Talk, sort of raw, where we bear down to the naked truth about our personal lives, business lives, and of course our money lives. And you just heard a whole entire topic about 1099s, 1099Ks, and got a little bit of raunchiness. And then of course we had to be matching partners in this case, which is fantastic. And of
Yeah.
course, building this confidence. Chris, what I'm going to do, just so you know, and my viewers out there, we're going to have a link that you can go to get access to some more information on Michelle's program. Also, since it's all about promotion, let's be real. If you've not gotten my 7 ways to legally shred your taxes overnight, I'm also going to include that link for you guys to get hands on that. So with that, I'm Jonathan Bengal here. Stay tuned till next time when we have another possible guest with more questions to get out there to further educate ourselves so that we can make wise decisions in our business. And remember, people, it is con mucho, mucho, mucho dinero. Until then, Jonathan Bengal.